In the grand halls of the Kremlin, where history echoes through gilded corridors and the weight of power is almost tangible, a new and unsettling feeling is taking root. Once symbols of unwavering authority, these halls now seem to harbor a growing sense of unease. The air is thick with tension, and even the most loyal guards exchange nervous glances, aware that something fundamental is shifting within these walls. For years, President Vladimir Putin projected absolute strength, his presence dominating the Russian political landscape. He was the unchallenged architect of Russia's destiny, commanding respect and fear in equal measure. But now, whispers from Moscow suggest cracks in his confidence. Behind closed doors, officials speak in hushed tones, questioning decisions that once seemed unassailable. The certainty that once defined the Kremlin's leadership is beginning to erode. The war in Ukraine, which was expected to be a swift and decisive campaign, has dragged on far longer than anticipated. Instead of victory, it has brought immense challenges, mounting casualties, and a sense of anxiety that now permeates Russia's government. The cost of conflict is being felt not just on the battlefield, but in the very heart of Russian power. Old alliances are fracturing, leaving the Kremlin increasingly isolated as the world shifts. Former partners are distancing themselves, and the familiar support network that once surrounded Russia is beginning to unravel. Meanwhile, dramatic changes in U.S. foreign policy have made global dynamics more unpredictable than ever before. Every nation is now forced to reassess its alliances, and the balance of power is in constant flux, adding to the Kremlin's uncertainty. All these factors, war, wavering allies, and U.S. unpredictability, are converging, leaving Putin looking more cornered and insecure than ever. The once unshakable leader now appears burdened by the weight of mounting pressures, his isolation growing with each passing day. The world now wonders, how will a threatened leader react, and what will that mean for global security? As uncertainty deepens, the shadow of fear stretching from the Kremlin may soon touch us all. For decades, Russia stood at the center of a close-knit circle of allies, nations that once formed the backbone of the Soviet Union. These relationships were built on shared history, economic ties, and a sense of mutual dependence. Russia once relied on a circle of compliant partners, who often looked to Moscow for guidance and support, especially in times of crisis. Especially important were former Soviet states like Belarus and Kazakhstan, whose leaders frequently met with Russian officials to discuss regional cooperation and security. But the war in Ukraine has dramatically tested these alliances. Many of Russia's old friends are now quietly distancing themselves, choosing to prioritize their own economic stability and national sovereignty over loyalty to Moscow. The atmosphere at regional summits has grown tense, with leaders weighing the risks of being too closely tied to Russia. Kazakhstan, for example, has refused to endorse Russia's invasion or recognize the annexed Ukrainian territories. Instead, it has chosen to comply with Western sanctions, signaling a clear desire to avoid being caught in the crossfire of global tensions. This move reflects a broader trend among Central Asian states, who are increasingly asserting their independence. Even Belarus, long considered Russia's most loyal ally and heavily dependent on Moscow for economic and political support, is now exploring ways to carve out more independence. The United States and European Union are offering incentives for political reforms, tempting Belarus to look westward for new opportunities. These subtle but significant shifts are leaving Russia increasingly isolated on the world stage. The vision of a unified, loyal bloc of former Soviet states is fading fast, replaced by a patchwork of nations pursuing their own interests. Moscow is now seen by many as a demanding and unpredictable partner, rather than the reliable center of a powerful alliance. The reluctance of world leaders to engage with Russia is becoming more visible at international gatherings. For President Putin, the slow crumbling of his alliance network is more than just a diplomatic setback. It's a direct threat to his legacy and the security of his regime. The loss of influence over neighboring countries could have lasting consequences for Russia's role in the world. The old bonds of the Soviet era are dissolving before our eyes, replaced by a new reality where national interest and self-preservation come first. For Russia, the era of unquestioned loyalty from its neighbors may be gone for good. The political winds in Washington have shifted dramatically in recent years, altering the very foundation of America's foreign policy approach. What was once a clear and consistent stance on the conflict in Ukraine has become far more complex and unpredictable, reflecting deeper changes in U.S. priorities and global strategy. This transformation has had a profound impact on the war in Ukraine, influencing not only the battlefield but also the diplomatic and economic dimensions of the conflict. The stakes have never been higher as the world watches to see how America's evolving position will shape the outcome. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. moved away from its previous unwavering support for Ukraine. Instead, it adopted a more transactional approach, treating the conflict as a bargaining chip. The administration began urging Ukraine to negotiate with Russia, while openly questioning the value and purpose of continued American aid. President Trump's public criticism of President Zelensky sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. This rhetoric fractured the once solid U.S.-Ukraine alliance, leaving Ukrainian leaders uncertain about the reliability of American support and raising serious doubts about the future of their partnership. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, American and Russian officials began engaging in secret talks, deliberately excluding Ukraine from the discussions. This signaled a significant shift as the U.S. appeared to favor a mediated settlement over a decisive Ukrainian victory, prioritizing stability and its own interests. The Kremlin interpreted these developments as a diplomatic win, seeing an opportunity to secure its interests. In contrast, Ukrainian officials felt increasingly isolated and abandoned by their most powerful ally, deepening their sense of vulnerability. The Trump administration even floated proposals that tied U.S. support to direct economic benefits, such as access to Ukraine's valuable mineral resources. These offers, which President Zelensky ultimately rejected, underscored the shift from principle-driven policy to one focused on tangible American gains. This marks a fundamental change in U.S. foreign policy, one where direct national gain is prioritized over long-held principles like sovereignty, democracy, and mutual support. The implications of this shift are being felt not just in Ukraine, but across the international community. The relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine has evolved from a partnership of equals to a negotiation between a powerful patron and a desperate client, with Ukraine left to navigate an increasingly uncertain future. As the world watches, America's new stance is not only reshaping the future of the Ukraine conflict but also redefining its own role on the global stage, leaving allies and adversaries alike to reconsider their expectations and strategies. America's reduced support is felt daily on Ukraine's front lines. The flow of weapons and aid has slowed, forcing Ukraine to ration resources and fight more defensively. For Russia, this signals weakening Western resolve, encouraging Moscow to press its advantage. European allies are alarmed, scrambling to fill the gap left by the U.S. At the Munich Security Conference, Zelensky's pleas for help met a new reality. Europe must now shoulder more responsibility. America's credibility as reliable partners damaged, with allies questioning future security guarantees. While the U.S. threatens new sanctions on Russia, its mixed messaging creates confusion and instability. This unpredictable environment makes a stable, negotiated peace even harder to achieve. In early 2025, secret U.S.-Russia talks began in Saudi Arabia, without Ukraine at the table. This exclusion confirmed fears that America was prioritizing direct engagement with Moscow over Ukraine's interests. For Kyiv, being left out risks a settlement at its expense. For Moscow, it's a diplomatic victory. The U.S. now sees the conflict as a stalemate, shifting focus from military victory to a negotiated end. Pressure mounts on both sides. Less aid for Ukraine, more sanctions for Russia. But this strategy is risky. Excluding Ukraine could legitimize Russian claims and fracture the Western alliance. The outcome of these secret talks could either end the bloodshed or leave Ukraine weaker and the West divided. The stakes have never been higher. America's unpredictable approach is a headache for Putin, who thrives on stability. One moment, Trump pleases Moscow. The next, he threatens new sanctions, making long-term planning impossible. The quiet betrayal of old allies like Kazakhstan and Belarus undermines Putin's vision of a powerful Russian-led bloc. Internally, the war's cost and simmering discontent threaten his grip on power. In Russia's centralized system, any sign of weakness can invite challenges from rival elites. The The Kremlin's reliance on espionage and covert actions signals insecurity, not strength. Putin's isolation is growing, and paranoia is setting in. All signs point to a leader who must constantly look over his shoulder. The Kremlin's image as an impenetrable fortress is cracking. The war in Ukraine, meant to showcase Russian might, has instead exposed military and economic weaknesses. Sanctions have turned Russia into a war economy, increasingly dependent on China and Iran, often as the junior partner. The most dangerous cracks are within. As former allies hedge their bets, Russian elites may question their loyalty. The failed Wagner mutiny showed that armed challenges to Putin's authority are possible. Harsh crackdowns and aggressive intelligence operations reveal a regime on the defensive. A truly confident government doesn't need constant reassurance. The Kremlin's anxiety is now impossible to hide. The world is in flux, with Russia, Ukraine, and the US at the center of a new era. The old certainties are gone, alliances are now transactional, and Moscow's power is waning. America's retreat from global leadership has created a power vacuum, forcing Ukraine to fight with less support and leaving Europe uncertain. Russia's dream of a loyal bloc is fading, replaced by isolation and economic stagnation. A cornered leader like Putin may act recklessly, raising global risks. The era of stable blocs is over. Shifting coalitions now define the world order. For Ukraine, the consequences are immediate and devastating. For everyone else, the lesson is clear. In this new age, nothing can be taken for granted.